It's time for us to get love right, folks. And so we invite you to check out the King and Queen of Hearts.
This is an incredible training for couples who are struggling in unsatisfying sex lives.
It's also for lifelong learners, people whose relationship is great and they want to make it even better.
In this 3-part training that is filled with 8 different tutorials like the art of tantric kissing, eye gazing that is deep and intimate, connective, and not creepy, and sacred sexual meditations, you do them with your lover to juice you up before sex. Communication tips and really, really valuable relationship essentials are all found in this training.
You know, a common mistake couples make is they wait, they put it off, they avoid, they resist. And if you want to continue doing that, well, good luck. But if you really want to make a change, get this today. Don't let another month go by where you're losing precious connection with your partner.
Plus, you can't beat the price on this program. One of our clients, Casey, said a spark in their intimacy is back on track.
Now, Sarah and her husband, you know what she told us, Willow? She said, finally, he learned how to kiss her right.
Oh my God, hallelujah. So happy for Sarah.
So if you want some radical changes in your love life, go to sexreimagined.com, click on courses, and scroll until you find the King and Queen of Hearts. And because you are a fan of the podcast, you can use the King and Queen 10 code in order to get 10% off. That is King and Queen 10, and you can use it in the checkout. Hey there, it's Leah and Willow, your hosts of the Sex Reimagined podcast.
Yes, and today we had hosts of this other podcast called Sharing My Truth, which was really fun. Mel and Suzi are the hosts of this. They have open, honest conversations. They air every Wednesday. Mel is a Gen X digital entrepreneur and married mom of 2 based in Toronto and London. And Suzi's a younger millennial actress, presenter, and content creator based in Toronto. Very cool city. They come together on their podcast to share their uncensored experiences and perspectives on life, love, trauma, and sex. So tune in and turn on and fall in love with these 2 on our podcast, and then go check out us on their podcast.
Welcome to the Sex Reimagined podcast, where sex is shame-free and pleasure-forward. Let's get into the show.
They're here. The Sharing My Truth podcast hosts are on the show. Welcome, Mel and Suzi.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for having us.
Yeah, we're so excited to drop in with you guys. You guys really offer a cool perspective around generational differences, like the Gen X's versus the millennials and all the different things that we've had that both generations have been kind of spoon-fed, and how do we sort through that, and you know what's the real truth behind what we grew up in culturally. So excited to drop into this, especially as it relates to sexuality.
Absolutely. There's just literally, it's kind of a never-ending thing to talk about, and that's why you can't shut us up. Like, we just are constantly finding new ways of like, why do we have these different perspectives on these topics where we don't have a huge age gap, right? Like, it's less than 25 years.
It's pretty enormous, to be fair.
Things that are different because Mel grew up differently, and yet we still do have some of the same opinions, right? That maybe you wouldn't expect. And I don't really believe that Mel is a regular 50-year-old. And maybe I'm not a regular 29-year-old. So, you know, it's just we found each other in a weird way, and we have weirdly similar and yet different opinions on
How did you guys
sexuality
find each other? Tell us about the genesis story of this whole operation.
Oh my God, Mel, it's like so beautiful. We actually met through Mel's husband, which is so funny. We have an episode about it on our pod if you really want to dive in deep to it. But we actually met through her husband. I met him at like a weird work happy hour. And we got to talking because Mel and her husband are both in this weird kind of, I don't know, Mel, how to describe it. It's like the domain name.
Yeah, I'm sort of in digital marketing, more so in like domain, like we buy and sell domains because we're so old that we got into the game
early. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like sexually focused almost. So they have a lot of opinions.
Certain percentage.
Yeah. So they know a lot of weird stuff. And I just love talking about sex. So I'll talk about sex, whoever wants to talk to me about sex. So that's how her husband and I got started talking. And then he was like, oh, do you want to meet my my wife? She like wants to start a podcast. And I was like, yeah.
That's so pretty much it.
And
then we got along, which I think is the
Yeah.
the unusual bit, that we're clearly very different, but we clicked and we genuinely enjoy like the podcast and each other's company, and we just laugh all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the great thing. So we're talking about serious things and things that are meaningful, but it's lighthearted. I mean, we've got to laugh, otherwise, you know, we're gonna cry.
Yeah, otherwise, life is not going to be very much fun.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, how long have you guys been at it?
Oh my God, it's been like a year and a half now, I
Yeah,
think.
about a year
So
and a half.
pretty recent, but we've seen a lot of amazing growth. And just because people love, and I'm sure you guys know this, to like listen to sex, listen to whatever it is, whatever's taboo, whatever's happening, people are not used to. And I think it's weird for me, and it's also, I think, a little bit weird for Mel because we're so open. People in general in our society in North America are not open about sex yet. And that surprises me because I'm a very open person, obviously. And it's wild. So we love talking about it. People love listening to it, but people do not want to talk about it themselves. And I think that's why we've seen such amazing growth in the last little few months. And yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah, I mean, particularly for me anyway, we talk about the generational thing, is I'm continually amazed at young people still have so many hang-ups. And I mean millennials, Gen Z, about sex, talking about it, you know, just about so many things around it that I find surprising, because I think, well, surely that's the domain of my generation and older, and we have valid reasons for that. And you think, well, now it's all, you know, you can buy a sex toy anyway. You can, you know, everyone's watching porn. Like, it's all much more open. And particularly women and men comparatively to the past. But we still have a long, long way to go. And obviously there are lots of reasons for that. But I find that very interesting, how younger women particularly, still are struggling a lot.
What are some of the hang-ups that you, like, specifically that you've been witnessing and noticing?
Some of my friends who were like in their 20s, early 30s, true millennials, right? Like, we've grew up like watching porn pretty much. Like, it was always available. Sex isn't like super weird. Obviously, like, we're not like in the non-binary phase where like the Gen Zs that we're seeing like that's happening. But we're in this weird stage where like, yeah, of course I own a sex toy, but like a lot of my friends don't. And I'm like, how do you not own a vibrator? How do you not own like a simple vibrator, not even like a weird shaped octopus dick, but like, how do you not own just like a regular vibrator? Like, like, it's just, it's something so for your own pleasure.
It's
why
shocking.
are you not doing that for yourself? So there's just like those little weird nuances in the millennial stage where I'm like, I would understand that why Mel's friends might not have a vibrator or a sex toy or may not want to talk about it, but some of my friends who I'm like,
well, they all do, but
I'm like, what's
so when we're talking about these millennials who don't own vibrators, is it a shame thing, or is it they haven't been educated, haven't found that part of their body? What do you think it is, like, overall?
It's such a good question because I've never been like that. Like, as soon, like, I turned 18 and I like went to Amsterdam like on a Euro trip and I like got my first vibrator and I was like, I'm never going back. Like, you know, like, you come for the first time and you're like, why wouldn't I want to make this better? Like, it's just crazy to me. So I don't know really what it is. 100% I think it's about shame, and people still feel weird about going into sex stores, but then that doesn't really take it back because I'm like, you can order this stuff online,
right?
Like, so easily. Like,
so
why
easily.
are we not doing that as much? So it's a great question. I personally don't know. I think it's about like also like, oh, I don't know if I need it. I can use my hands, or I maybe just want a man. It's something that I don't know if I'll ever get answered.
I kind of wonder if, you know, I was just listening to it's a podcast, Armchair Expert. And he had a sex expert on around the beginning of the new year. I'm just catching up on some episodes because I'm out of smut to listen to. Look, I need some new smut. I am so
That's so funny.
bored right now.
We gotta make some.
But what's that?
We gotta make some then.
You know what? I was just speaking to a client today who is working on some of his sexual stuff, and he's a writer for his job. And so one of the things he came up with for his coaching action plan was to write some erotica.
I
And
love
to
that.
start
So fun.
reprogramming himself in the way he looks at
Yeah.
sexuality, because he's getting sober from porn. And so we're trying
Wow.
to re-engage a new way for him to explore sexuality. And I just love that he was like, "Do you think I could write it?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah,
Yes.
you can write
Yes.
it, you know? Let's go on an adventure.
Such
Yeah,
a great
Yeah.
creative outlet. Yeah.
It's a great
But one
idea.
of the things that we're talking about in this episode, back to this episode, this author from and therapist from Santa Barbara, actually, Willow,
Mhm.
was like, we have a story that says women's sexual pleasure is confusing and more challenging and harder to access than men. And she really posed a pushback on that. She goes, it's not that we're more difficult or that our sexual orgasm is just as easy and simple as a boy's. It's just we've normalized boys' orgasms. We have a clit, they have a penis. You rub where it's most sensitive. It's not hard to figure out. We just haven't normalized it that women need to explore their clitoris and that they can do it at a younger age than they ever thought. It's like we've been given this idea that it's up to boys, mainly from a heterosexual standpoint, to make you come.
Yeah,
But no
hun-
one really
I-
teaches the boys how. Same-sex relationships, I think, have a much easier time getting each other off than heterosexual relationships. Thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense though, doesn't it? Because if you're very young, you're starting on your journey, you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. And if you barely know what you're doing, with yourself. So if you're in a same-sex relationship, at least you sort of both vaguely know where everything is.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, you've got a
Yeah.
heads up literally in that respect. I think, going back to this idea of why have some things kind of progressed for women, but some things really don't seem to have moved on as fast as they really should have.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot to do with the education. You got to remember, I mean, I have 2 teenage daughters. Now, I'm very open-minded. Obviously, I'm doing this podcast. I communicate a lot. I mean, that may seem strange to people because I'm English, but I do communicate. I talk a lot. It annoys them, but, I do it. But
I like it
obviously
when you talk. I like your accent.
Isn't she sexy? It's
Yeah.
unbearable
Yeah.
sometimes.
Give me some.
But I mean, a lot of people I know who are mothers who, I'm 51, who are in their 50s or late 40s, whatever, and they have teenage girls, boys. They don't communicate with them. They don't talk to them about sex. And they do this really odd thing. They're like, well, you can't go out and you shouldn't be drinking. You should be doing this. You shouldn't be having sex. And I always say to them, what were you doing when you were 16?
Right.
I mean, obviously you want them to be safe. But you've got to strike a balance between kind of guiding them and being weird. Like, what were you trying to do when you were 16? You were trying to get drunk and get laid. I mean, that's the norm. That's what humans do.
Yeah.
And I think people really sort of still shrouded in this sort of weird thing. So they're teaching these kids who are millennials, Gen Z, my kids are Gen Zs, and it sort of filters down. So I think almost until there's a generation that isn't weird about it, then the next generation, then maybe they have a chance of not being weird about it
Right.
because we're just perpetuating it. And I also think there's this thing like men are still taught this thing, like you're talking about, masturbation for men. I mean, when I was growing up, I didn't even know that women masturbate. Didn't
Yeah,
even
me
think
either.
that was a thing. Like,
I mean, I was
women-
kind of
women-
doing it, but I didn't know it was a thing. And
I was like,
It was
what is
right.
the clit? Like,
Yeah.
we don't even what?
Yeah.
right. No
Yeah.
one was talking about the
Yeah.
clit when I was in high school.
I can actually think of the time when I heard that word for the first time, like, oh, that makes sense. But for years, like in your 20s, had no idea that it actually had some kind of function or needed to be stimulated. And that if men aren't taught that, if they're not educated, then, and we're talking obviously the greater proportion of relationships are men and women, then there's no hope. I mean, and we keep perpetuating this thing. And then I think young women have relationships and they're just endlessly wanting to pleasure men. Like when they start their relationships, they don't think about themselves. And we need to change that somehow. And we haven't succeeded. I don't know how we're going to succeed, but I don't think we have.
Well, by podcasts and conversations like
Yeah.
this.
Thank you.
So is that what you're seeing, Suzi, in your generation too? Like women are starting out into relationships. I mean, that is so true. So many of the women that I support and help, they're like, I don't feel like I'm having a good time because they're performing, right? They're not
Right.
actually feeling sexual pleasure because they're not accustomed to get like their sexuality, right? We all are responsible for our own arousal and our own sexuality.
But
And
no
if
one
we're-
teaches you that. They
yeah.
just-
And if we're not in touch with it and we don't know that, then like we get into these relationships thinking that we're there to serve the other and that they should turn our arousal on, which that turns into a big fucking downward spiral quickly. So Suzi, are you seeing that in your generation still?
100%. I mean, I didn't learn, like we just spoke about, I didn't learn what the clit was until like I like found, in quotations, my clit when I had my first orgasm at like 18. When I started having sex at like 14. So that's 4 years without an orgasm.
Wow.
Like that's insane to me now, where I'm like, I was just faking it, but not knowing I was faking it. And I think a lot of women go through that because we just don't know what is going on down there. And now I'm like, how could I ever fake it again when I know what an orgasm is?
Right.
But I will say a short little story. I just broke up with my boyfriend recently, and so I've been dating around and sleeping around. And
Get it.
and
Doing research.
doing research.
That's right.
That's
For the podcast. It's all in the name of the podcast.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey guys, what would it be like if you could last 10 times longer when you're having sex?
We are going to teach you how to gain massive confidence as a lover, all without performance anxiety, gimmicks, or prescription.
This course is perfect for you if you've ever been mortified by a sexual encounter that ended way too early.
Or if you've ever avoided intimacy out of fear that you won't last as long as your lover desires. Or maybe you long to give your partner multiple orgasms but can't last long enough to make that a reality.
Well, good news, we've got your back. And it's in our course, Last 10 Times Longer. Go to sexreimagined.com/last-10x-longer.
And for all of our favorite listeners out there, we are giving you a discount, 20% off, y'all. Just put in podcast 20, all caps, podcast 20, to get your 20% off of this phenomenal course that you're going to want to review more than once.
The link is in the show notes. We cannot wait to see you inside this course. Plus, don't forget, we always got tons of bonuses. See you there.
Dedicated to the body, ladies. And I slept with this like Gen X guy, okay? Very nice gentleman. Okay, not angry about it. And he was like, and he was really great in the bedroom. And he was like, I don't understand. Like men, it's so easy to jerk off and we can just come whenever the we want. And he's like, you only get so many chances with a woman. And like, why wouldn't you want to make sure that they are having a good time and like pleasing them when you're with them, like, and not like care about yourself in that way, right? And I was like, oh my God, like, why doesn't every man think like you though? Like, that's not a normal thought of a man. And then I was like, why is that not a normal thought of a
No,
man?
I think it is.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the men that I encounter, they are so single focused on wanting to make their partner come because their arousal is hooked into their partner's arousal. So they want to feel like the man, like you have to come in order for me to know I'm okay sexually. So then a woman often feels all this pressure to perform.
To come.
And then there's an upset when it's like, well, why aren't you coming? There must be something wrong with you. And she's like, I don't know. You know, wait, isn't it? I mean, shouldn't you be doing something? So I actually see that like men want women to come as much as women want to come.
Well, but this is
but they've never been taught how to do it either.
Interesting statement, though, coming from Suzi saying that, you know, she's seeing more men not having that perspective
100%.
in her generation.
100%.
So somehow that got lost.
Well, it might be. I want to push back on that a little bit because I work with a lot of men that are your generation. And that's what they're telling me. I don't know that there's a lot of men having that conversation with women. That's what
therein
might
lies the
might
problem.
make that guy unusual. But I think at the heart of most men is they want to please women. They want to pleasure women. They want to feel awesome. They want to feel confident. They want to feel like they are
Like,
sexually
I gave
adequate.
her the best fucking orgasm of her life.
Yeah, I don't think guys are sexually selfish. I think that's an old story from generations past. I don't know if that's really true anymore.
Well, yeah, and like women are not speaking up about what we
I
want.
guess it just depends on what
Yeah.
circles you're
Yeah,
in.
I mean, do they want to pleasure women because it makes them feel manly? So in
More
itself, it's quite an
masculine, yeah.
egotistical act. Or are they actually doing it because they really care about the woman and
Want
really
to.
want to? So they're saying,
I think
"Look,
it's
the woman
both.
takes more. So I can do it generally more easily because I function more easily if we're going to put it in those terms. So let's concentrate on the woman first, make sure she's in a good place, and then it's me." How many men actually are like that? So they actually really, it's not ego.
I don't think you can separate the two. I think it's both.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't think it's an either or. I think they both want it for their ego, and they also generally want their lover to feel pleasure.
I mean, yeah, they kind of go hand in hand. You get off on both. Don't we get off on both?
It's true. Like
Yeah.
I want a guy to come to make me feel good because I'm like, oh my God, I just made my man come. But then I'm like, I want him to come to feel pleasure.
Yeah,
So
like when everyone
100%.
comes, everyone tends to feel
Everyone's
successful.
happy.
And when only one person comes, I think sometimes, like when it's not very easy for one person to climax, there tends to be a hopelessness that gets felt by both people. And maybe the male partner just kind of feels like they can't succeed, and so they give up, but they still have their needs. And then I think there's some unconscious sexual energy that both sexes have. I think the predominant one for men is they aren't aware of their own energy when they penetrate a partner. And so what they end up fucking into them is their stress from the day, their tension, sort of this unconscious drive,
Right.
and some selfishness. Like they just want to get relief because wouldn't it be nice to sleep so good tonight? Well, nothing will help you sleep better than having an ejaculation. And so you're having your routine sex at the end of the night, and she becomes the depository for all that stress, all that tension, all that unconsciousness. And he's not really paying attention always to her pleasure if she's not also paying attention to her pleasure. And then we have years that go by and she's feeling unfulfilled and frankly gets sick and tired of having sex. Like what's in it? What's the payoff for her? She's not getting the pleasure. Instead, she's getting this tension. And then he wonders why she's such a cold bitch.
Yeah.
I mean, it ends up being this weird thing. And it's like they don't even realize it's not because she's a cold bitch.
Yeah.
It's not because she doesn't know how to orgasm. Maybe she hasn't unpacked her full pleasure potential and connected to her own desire and connected to her own turn on because no one's bothered to ask her about it. And meanwhile, they're both feeling inadequate and blaming the other one. And then we wonder why people get divorced after 19 years, 25 years, 42 years. I mean, I've watched so many divorces. Oddly, I've had so many couples come through my workshops who are at the breaking up point after 42 years of marriage. It's a very strange number. Anyways, I don't know. I mean, that's my theory. My theory on sort of the relationship that's gone cold in the bedroom is there's some unconscious sex happening where he is a little bit asleep. And I don't say this to like man bash. I think it's quite instinctual and biological for a man to ejaculate to release the tension of the day. It's a reset button. But it takes 1 second to come up with a
100%.
thought form
Yeah.
that says,
Yeah.
what do I want to penetrate her with tonight? That she feel beautiful, that she's safe, that she belongs, that she's desirable, that she's
Yeah, I
hot,
think-
that she's juicy, that she feels pleasure, that she feels like a goddess. I mean, all you have to do is think of one gorgeous word to say, feel this, babe. Penetrate her with that and see what happens after 10 days.
Yeah.
That is so interesting. I've literally never heard of that in those terms of
Right.
like you're penetrating with actual feeling.
Yeah.
I've never ever heard
Consciousness.
that. That's very interesting.
I saw something recently in a podcast or something on social media, and it was about how men and women orgasm, and that for men, it's release. So the energy's going that way.
Yeah.
And for women, it's like energizing. So the men are just getting rid of stuff, like you're
Right.
saying, where women, it's giving them life.
Well, it also depends
And-
on how you're orgasming and how you're directing the energy, because men could ejaculate as well and fill themselves up with all of that jing chi. And women can totally, shoot their ejaculation out of their body and their energy out of their body. And
Yeah, but oftentimes when
True.
women ejaculate, they can recirculate that, and it can be energizing. It is true that energetically, I mean, if you look at it, right, like out in. So yeah, we can receive a ton. That's why women are so chappy afterward.
Can I actually because I actually had this conversation really recently, and I was like, what is this like post-cum clarity, and why do men get it so hard and women just want to like snuggle and enjoy and like chat? Like, why are men like, get the fuck out of my face, I do not want to talk to you anymore?
I think I have an answer for this one.
Please.
When he goes to ejaculate, it drains him. Right now, as a younger man, he's got a shorter refractory period. They're not a perpetual motion machine.
the majority of people.
The majority of men, at least, are not having sex a lot.
I think a lot of, that's the other thing we find, like, and they talk about it a lot in the media, young people not having sex as much. I'm convinced it's because they don't go out as much.
Yeah.
Like, I think, I'm always saying to Suzi, when I was young, when I was her age, if I didn't go out, she goes out a lot, but if I didn't go out, what were you doing? Staring at the wall? You couldn't sit in your seat, order a pizza, order a date, order a pair of jeans and not move a nanomillimeter. Now you can do that.
yeah, it's such a different world.
Exactly. And you had to go to the bars and parties and meet people. Otherwise, you weren't doing anything.
Well, and I wonder too if all of that sort of like on demand ordering on your little square device that you always have right next to you, like if that makes people lazy in their way of communicating and of being in relationship with themselves and then being in relationship with each other. It's like, oh, well, that one didn't work out. Let me just swipe to find the next one. It's like, yeah, there is this sort of more on demand culture that we're living in. And so is it making millennials and Gen Zers like more or less apt to put the work in that it takes to create a, beautiful, long, sustaining relationship?
I don't know. Like, I, as someone who literally just got back on the apps after an 8-year relationship, like, the apps have changed a lot since I was on them at like 20 years old. And it's like, and I look at these guys who are trying to talk to me and like the small talk on an app or like on texting, I just cannot stand. And so I'd way rather, it's just exhausting to me. Like I'd way rather meet someone in person. And this is obviously so personal to me. Like I would way rather meet someone in person, feel a vibe, if there's a good vibe, if I'm actually attracted to them in person, because in person is a lot different than a picture. I'm like, feeling whatever we're feeling and then knowing right away if this is going to work or not, instead of texting someone for like 2 or more weeks and then finally getting together because your life is busy and shit happened, and then finally getting together and like being like, oh my God, I really don't like this person, and like now I have to like ghost them, and then it's just like exhausting, and then you feel bad, and then you find someone new and you do the exact same thing over and over again.
Let's take a quick break.
Ladies, do you want to explore your sexuality and experience true sexual healing?
The Vaginal Orgasms Masterclass teaches you and your partners how to unlock your full sexual potential and awaken the G-spot, the sacred spot, and the cervix for an unforgettable sexual experience. Would learning how to finally surrender and release grief, fear, and uncertainty benefit your outlook on life, love, and relationships? We certainly think so. Common misconceptions of the G-spot, including its anatomy and function as an erogenous zone, will be covered in this course.
Plus, we're going to teach you 7 different massage strokes for the G-spot that dissolve blocked energy and increase your pleasure tenfold.
We're going to teach you how to locate the sacred spot and the best methods to stimulate it for maximum pleasure.
And you're going to learn about cervical orgasm techniques, which are the most powerful and also often elusive style of climaxing.
This class is primarily geared toward women, but men have taken it as well and learned so much about how to pleasure their partners.
So get ready for multiple O's, my friends. And you can get all of that at sexreimagined.com/female masterclass. And for being a listener of the show, we've got a beautiful coupon code for you. It is 20% off this course. Just type in podcast20, that's all caps, podcast20, and get yourself a great deal on this on-demand course.
Boy, you're really selling the online dating, Suzi.
Literally, I hate online dating so much. Like I don't know if I'm ever gonna go on one of these Hinge dates. I'm literally on it for like the ego boost and the distraction of just my daily life. So that's personally me. But like, someone like my brother who met his like gorgeous fiance on Tinder.
Yeah. Lots of people find them. Yeah.
And it's like, it happens all the time. So it's really just like who you are and what you're looking for. For me, I need that personal in-person connection though.
Well, we just did an episode on dating apps actually, and it's statistically, obviously, it's going to happen because if everyone's doing it, then
but it's
then
disco
it's
for
happen.
men, isn't it?
I think so. I think the thing is that they have to, that there's so much kind of performance about it. Like before they've even done anything, before they've even met you. I mean, you think before the apps, like we were just talking about, had to go to a bar, had to go to a party, you had to get, know each other.
Or even like a bookstore or a coffee shop. No one does that anymore.
And you didn't
no one
know,
talks to anyone.
But you didn't know this person liked hiking, was a concert pianist, was, blah, 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 as a blah, 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 jet skiing mastermind, whatever. You had to find this out by going on a few dates, maybe going away, talking to them. Whereas I think far too much information.
That's interesting.
I mean, I don't think I would have slept with anybody when I was in my 20s if I'd known that much information. I mean, you just wouldn't have done, would you? You'd just be like, no, thanks.
Also, like chemistry is
so important. Jeez.
Well, it's not only important, but it's impossible to have when you won't even meet somebody. If you're only having a text connection, if you've only swiped and maybe like had a couple phone calls, you would be surprised who you could possibly be attracted to.
Exactly. I've said this to Suzi. Yeah.
Women have a huge advantage with online dating as compared to men. I mean, there's the Adam Sandler effect. Women can be very attracted to someone who's not very attractive, but if they're funny and they make you feel great and they're wonderful conversationalists, they can become so beautiful to you. You can become so attracted to someone's spirit and how they carry themselves and what they do in the world and how the world responds to them. And they may not be a classic handsome dude, That's
100%. They have charisma. In fact, Suzi showed me this picture of this guy and she's like, oh my God, he's bald. And I'm like, yeah, but he could be. You've got to kind of go outside your parameters because he could be a really nice guy.
Yeah, and I do like funny guys. Like I'm much more attracted to the personality than the face.
But you don't know until you've met them. And you have, not you, but like people on the apps, they've got all this criteria that they think is really important. And sometimes when you meet somebody, you're like, oh, actually, I don't give a shit that he's not a banker or whatever it is that you want.
I have to tell you, some of the homelier guys are much better at sex
because they've studied
than the best looking guys because they got to work harder.
Seriously, our short kings are so good at fucking. It is unbelievable. They have to try so much harder because they're like short and they had to like, and they're honestly, I found that short guys are like wealthier. They're more generous. The less attractive a man is, the better he is at his everything else. It's like the most interesting thing ever.
Oftentimes.
Yeah.
There
you go.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, nice.
Lesson learned.
So, Suzi, I'm curious, like, who are you looking for now? What kind of guy? What are you looking for in the next relationship department?
$60 million.
Have you thought about
Such a good idea. I mean, such a good question. Like, I have no idea. It's so funny. Like, if you were to ask me this at like 20 or 25, it would be a completely different answer than I am now with like my late 20s, like where I'm like, I mean, yeah, right. Like
I hope so.
So funny because I still have like so much love and like respect for my like ex-boyfriend who was like literally such an angel and like, but we just, in my opinion, it was just we were going on different paths a bit, and I was like, what am I missing from this? And I'm like, and I don't know if you ladies will agree, but I think a lot of millennials, millennial women are like, oh my God, I actually do want to be taken care of a bit. Like, and this is something that at 20, I was like, oh my God, I can take care of myself. I make a lot of money. I am doing amazing. Like, I don't need a man to do anything for me. I'm going to pay for my dinners. I'm going to do whatever. And now I'm like, oh my God, like, of course I'm still making money, whatever, taking care of myself. But I'm like, no, I actually do want a man to treat me and like do nice things for me and like in the way of monetary value, which doesn't sound good when I say it, but it's just the reality of how I feel in my late 20s.
That's exactly how I felt at
So
your age
interesting.
going into my 30s. And there was something validating about it too. Like I wanted to be worthy of someone cherishing me with things like gifts and trips and, being a provider. And I am going to also reciprocate. I want to also have someone to spoil and delight. And it's like, I'm not in it for the money, but I want the money to represent something. And it makes sense that there's a little bit of worth and a little bit of money that go together because that's how we place value on things. I mean, I think when I hit like 25, I'd had enough relationships with broke artists. I was like, I am not dating another guitarist. I am setting that shit down. I love the artist, but I just don't want to be in a relationship with you anymore.
100%.
They're often very good in bed. They have good rhythm. They know how to rock the boat.
I'm not against a musician, but he better be touring. You know what I mean? Like,
I was a sucker for it. Yeah.
just like I really want a nice. I'm really looking for. I've always loved a really genuine, nice guy who makes me laugh. Like that's just. I love a nice guy. I've really just like really enjoyed a nice, genuine guy. So that's just something that I've always been attracted to. But yeah, it's really difficult when you also want that monetary value a bit. And just the way of like, I want to feel appreciated and valued. And I want a guy to be like, this is going to make her happy. So I want to do this for her.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it is.
It's really nice when it's that genuine, like, there's such an abundance of financial flow that it's a gift for them to give the gift to
That's what it is.
the one that they cherish the most. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I always have said to my daughters from a very young age that when looking for a partner, and they're both heterosexual, that, I don't care about their background, whatever, what you should look for is somebody who's kind. Like, honestly, that sounds a little cheesy, but is a good person who honestly wants to have your back and is a nice person. And the other thing is, and it is a kind of outdated idea, but a man who will step up. And, because there will be periods in your life when you have children or whatever it is, when maybe you have to at some point support him and he supports you, whatever it is. But somebody who's willing to step up, who's not going to be basically a guitarist making no money. And I always say, it doesn't have to be president of the United States or Coca-Cola Corporation, but just somebody has that in them that they want to, do something.
They want to
step up.
provide.
They want to provide.
Yeah, I think it's so nice to, for a man and for a woman to bring stability to a relationship.
Yes, that's a good way
sense
of
of
putting it.
stability inside of themselves and also in the 3D realm of like financially and, can take care of stuff and can move the needle forward in life. And we do look to the male counterparts to be those providers and those protectors, and they actually are wired. Their brains and their hormones and their bodies are wired to do that. So when they do that well, there is a sense of empowerment, that comes with that. I think what we could do as heterosexual women is create more space for them to be in their power, because
100%.
we've all grown up. I think all these generations have grown, maybe not the Gen Zers right now, but, these messages of like, you got to be strong as a woman. You got to do it all on your own. You got to make sure that you can cover yourself. Cause this is a message for a lot of women. Like you don't depend on a man. And so there's a lot of masculine moving through the world that women are doing, right? They're moving through the world in that yang way. We're swimming in a sea of yang these days, and it leaves no room as the female counterpart. It leaves no room for the man to be the man if she's so busy being in that role.
I think that's very well said. It's 100% it. And we are very conflicted about it. And I think as a Gen Xer, I was taught by my father, like, you stand on your own 2 feet, you get an education. If you want to drive a fancy car, live in a fancy house, you do it. And so I was taught that, and I did do that. But I think the missing piece is that it's nice to have a partner to be a team, to do
Yeah.
it together, because there'll be moments when you need each other, and you need to be vulnerable to each other. And that's where the beauty of it is, the beauty of a successful relationship.
Exactly. And in hetero there is that sort of like, the biological dynamics that are going on, in a male brain versus a female brain. When we're looking at same sex, it's like we all carry yang and yin energy in our bodies, and we can step into either role as we choose to. And I think that, we're adaptable creatures, so we can create that dynamic in anything that we do. But Leah and I just were doing she hosted a BDSM training in her house last weekend with Om Rupani, and it was super fun. And one of the things that we talked about was super dynamic. I mean, so many fucking layers I'm still integrating and processing. We all are, because it was really fascinating. But one of the things that we talked a lot about was Eros lives more fully. It's more alive when we're playing with a yes and a no at the same time. So erotic energy builds and thrives when things are a little naughty or a lot naughty, So when we bring in the no and play with the light side, with the, oh yeah, like yes, like, that other quality of sexuality, then we have more charge, we have more energy, it's more erotic, we're more aroused, we're more turned on. So all this to say that there's really, it's very, BDSM is actually very Taoist from my perspective now.
That's so
It's
funny.
the yin and the yang. Like, we can't have one without the other. We don't know what light is if we don't know what dark is. We don't know what dark is if we don't know what light is. And so I think we are, in this culture where it's like, oh, well, get the degree and get the job and make the money and get the home and have the kids and do all the things. Then, oh, good for you, good for you, good for you. But it's like, meanwhile, there's these parts of ourselves that are hiding in the shadows, that are tucked away, that are like feeling like I'm not worthy, or I don't have enough, or, am I, good enough for this man or this woman? And so bringing those things to the playground of sexuality really lightens them and gives them a chance to come to light.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's
The yes and the
interesting.
no. I like that. Makes so much sense to me
Yeah.
that now that you're saying it, I'm like, why are you making me horny, Willow? So rude. But yeah, no, that makes sense to me 100%.
Yeah, because
What would be some of this, putting you guys on the spot a little bit and kind of personal, but if you don't mind,
never
like
know.
what would be
Never mind.
like what would be a no for you? What would be like a naughty little no that you might have fun like bringing into a sexual scenario?
I'm like a naughty no or a fuck no? Like a naughty no.
A fuck no, Leah.
Like
we
a
can't
fuck,
hear
like
you.
a fuck no, like get out of my
Yeah,
butt.
fuck
Like,
no.
okay, got it.
Yeah.
I don't know. You never know. No, like a naughty no. Okay, let's a fuck no is like, I don't like pee, anything pee.
Yes, I don't like.
Okay,
no.
that's a fuck no for me.
No peeing.
No
people.
peeing.
Okay.
No like weird,
No pee zone.
defecate, like none of that. That's a
Okay.
that's a fuck no for me.
No peep. No poop.
No poop.
Okay.
No. Nothing that smells weird. You know what I mean?
Okay.
That's I
okay.
think that's
Well, sex sometimes smells
Yeah,
weird.
It definitely does. Yeah.
not in the better way that those things
But not
do.
completely
Okay,
revolting.
okay. It's
That's
not
the
waste.
disgust thing coming
Yeah.
in.
Let's take a quick break.
Hey guys, what would it be like if you could last 10 times longer when you're having sex?
We are going to teach you how to gain massive confidence as a lover, all without performance anxiety, gimmicks, or prescription.
This course is perfect for you if you've ever been mortified by a sexual encounter that ended way too early.
Or if you've ever avoided intimacy out of fear that you won't last as long as your lover desires. Or maybe you long to give your partner multiple orgasms but can't last long enough to make that a reality.
Well, good news, we've got your back, and it's in our course, Last 10 Times Longer. Go to sexreimagined.com/last-10,
longer.
And for all of our favorite listeners out there, we are giving you a discount, 20% off, y'all. Just put in podcast 20, all caps, podcast 20 to get your 20% off of this phenomenal course that you're going to want to review more than once.
We cannot wait to see you inside this course. Plus, don't forget, we always got tons of bonuses. See you there. But no, the naughty no. I mean, like, I'm into like quite a few things.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, you know, a little
Yeah,
light.
what
like,
is your
little
naughty no?
BDSM light? You know, like I love a little spank,
A spank.
little one, little flap, little spit, little.
spit.
I'm in the whole. I'm into the whole thing.
What about a little bit of degradation, like a little bit of
I
humiliation?
love that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I love it.
No,
Nope.
no.
No, like,
It's interesting. Like
Love it.
she said, she's submissive. That's not my bag at all.
just in the bedroom, because in life, I'm like,
Yeah,
You're dominating.
I'm
Yeah.
not.
bitch, trying
And
to
You
be
got your
anything.
young
Yeah.
on.
I don't like.
You
the
don't like
whole
being
s-
submissive?
No,
Oh,
Do you like to
Are you
be
the dom
more
then?
dominating?
I'm more dominating. I don't
Okay.
like being. I don't like being. I don't like things where you're some like holding throat, like you're being some.
None of that
What's
for
the,
Mel.
no, that's just doesn't.
So that would be a big no
It's a
for you.
huge
that's
then.
a
no
fuck
for
no
me.
for Mel.
And I'm not.
Okay.
We've discussed this many times. I do have a bit of a problem with spit.
Yeah, she's very
Okay.
non-spit.
But you
Okay.
know, I'm not super into that. But I'm not. I don't like the submitted thing. No.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
She's a dog.
I think I could be a dominatrix.
Yeah, I could see you in some plastic
whip.
leather
Well,
with the whip in your hand.
new
Mm,
career
for
for
sure.
me.
I could see you wearing your like Manolo Blahniks like on someone's back and being like, "You like that?
Yeah,
That's you."
Oh, what?
yeah. Why not?
Oh my god,
So funny.
fun.
What about you guys?
Now, what about us? So we're
Relationship.
talking some fun shit here. We're talking about dominating.
Doms.
I really dig it. I was having a lot of fun being in the dom role, and I was doming two pretty smoking hot men too.
Oh my
So
God,
that was
sad.
really fun. And it was also a lot to dom two men at once. And this was also my first time. And I was like on the heaviest days of my moon cycle. So there was a lot going on. But I rose to the occasion, and I'm down for the submissive, and I was a little bit scared about the humiliation piece because I'm a sensitive little girl. I'm a sensitive little lamb, and I get real emotional real easy. And I was like, I don't know if I'm going to dig that humiliation part, but it actually hit something inside of me, which is this, these old stories and these old beliefs. And I'll give you the specifics of it. For me, it was like, people are like, men are leaving me because I don't cause enough drama in their lives, and they think drama and codependency is what love is, and so they go back to the drama queen,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
And the one that they have to
Interesting.
save because they're Mr. Savior. That's their archetype. So I'm just projecting all this stuff
Right.
onto these men. Meanwhile, my story is like, well, I must be boring. I must be too vanilla. I must be too like uninteresting, so that was sort of the thing that I gave these men to feed back to me in this role that we were doing. And they both were like, one of them in particular was quite good at it. And he really brought it into the present moment, because the reality is both of them were interested in me. So I know I'm not uninteresting to them, right?
Definitely not.
They both kind of like had a thing for me too over the weekend, which was great. I had a thing for them too. But then in this scene, they're like, you're so boring, And so for a while I was like, okay, yeah, but it's not really hitting. It's not really happening for me. And then one of them was like, do something fucking interesting right now. God, you're so boring. I don't even know why I'm wasting my time with you, And then that like finally hit something in me. That was this really old.
Actually,
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. And then meanwhile, they're mixing it with all this sexual pleasure. The humiliation gets mixed with this sexual pleasure, and it kind of scrambles the old patterning in your synaptic, cephalic brain. And basically it ungrips you from the belief, because I actually did grow up, and I was processing yesterday with a friend of mine just the whole weekend. And as I was talking it out and kind of processing it out, I was like, oh my God, my dad used to say this all the time. Anytime I would say I'm bored, He would say
Wow.
only boring people are bored. That's how,
Oh,
that's like what I grew up on, that phrase.
interesting.
So then what did I do? I went out into life and I studied all the most fascinating, esoteric, obscure things. Like I teach Taoist sexology. Who even knows what that fucking is, right? And so it's just like, I've accumulated all this knowledge and I've always been wise. And so it's like, I know I'm not boring. I know that clearly, but there was still just this old sort of like unconscious. And I think that's the power of this work, is like you're bringing unconscious, the subconscious, the subordinate part of you to a place where it can be seen, where it can be acknowledged, where it can be met, so that it doesn't have such a grip on you and you're not making choices from those subconscious places anymore.
Yeah,
Wow.
this kinky BDSM stuff really, it turns some things on its head. It's a bizarre and wonderful landscape to watch. Like the amount of cathartic potential lives inside of it. And I think we have a lot of pictures that arise that make us think, ooh, I don't know if that's for me. Or, I have an aversion I need like the pain stuff that's connected to it. I'm not big into floggers. You can spank me a little bit, but I'm not all that big into spankings. I was spanked as a kid for punishment. So for some reason, that's just
Right.
not like, that doesn't actually do it for me. But it would for some other people.
I was too, but I like spanking.
Really? Well, so I have a sexual abuse background in my childhood.
True.
And yet there's something empowering like this. Me and my husband might play out this scene very soon. I confessed to him last night. I said, I want to go through a scene where like, I want you to say things like, see, you made me do it. I want to like bend over and he's examining me and he's like, I'm not going to fuck you. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to fuck you, but I am going to look at you, and then he ends up touching me. See, you made me do it, like blaming
So
me for the sexual
interesting.
inappropriateness, which
Yeah,
of course could have been a theme. Younger, it's my fault, right? That all the bad trauma happened. But now as an adult, after also doing a lot of healing work, somatic healing work, there's something about saying, oh yeah, it is my fault. Like now there's like a whole healed self that can go, oh, I'm going to get off on this thing that I used to feel so much sadness around. And now I'm going to kink out on it. It's kind of like the thing you're most afraid of. You can fetishize it a little bit. And then
Yeah,
you
take
get
your power back.
rewarded. You take your power back. It's like,
Yeah.
actually, I'm totally consenting to this. I'm going to ask for it. I'm going to own it. And I'm going to delight in the fact that it's counterintuitive. And I'm going to reward. There's like a payoff in the tension. There's a payoff in breaking the rule. There's a payoff in the naughtiness. And there's also the reward of the orgasm at the end of doing something you're sort of afraid of. And I think that's
So
a very liberated
Yeah.
thought form. However, I also think you have to be very psychologically sound
Oh my gosh.
to dabble in some of this stuff. And that's my little concern about it. And actually, it's a little bit of my concern of putting it out there as a sex educator and hosting things.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, you got to really make sure people have their shit together. Because
Yeah, I really think you have to be well healed.
It's like the same as like
Yeah.
a BDSM thing, though. Everyone wants to try BDSM and then they get like spanked one time. They're like, holy shit, that's actually not okay. But then sometimes they're already into it and they don't know how to say no. So you have to push your boundaries to find out what your boundaries are.
well, in any good BDSM organization, consent is like the number one
Yeah.
thing. So there's safe words. There's so much communication that's always been interwoven in it. It's actually the thing that they do well, better than any other sexual adventure people can go on. BDSM has the best reputation for boundaries and knowing when you've reached a limit. And
Boundaries. Because
Yeah.
good boundaries make you feel safe. Like if you know there's a fence out there, then you can be more wild and free
Yeah.
and it's a container. That's one of the first things that we learned is containment.
it's people playing around without any mentor
Yeah.
that are going to fuck shit up if they're just like,
Or on drugs
winging
or
it.
alcohol or
Yeah.
whatever.
Right. But I don't
So-
know. We're virgins in that area.
Yeah, so I'm curious for both of you, like what have you seen like Mel with your generation as far as people getting into more kinky stuff at this time in their lives?
Yeah, it seems like your generation is cooler about it than
versus like the The millennial.
Like, this is very foreign for us at 45. Yeah.
I think people are a lot
Mhm.
kinkier than we think.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more common. I think people go, ooh, you know, but I think, and there are levels of kink, aren't there? Let's be fair. Lots of
Totally.
people introduce basic levels of kink and they don't actually think it's kinky, like handcuffs or whatever,
Right.
to the very like sort of extreme level. Like we interviewed this woman who was like, she was in the BDSM scene in Japan and she was tortured and stuff. So like there is levels
Oh,
of
I bet we were.
Elizabeth?
What's her name? Elizabeth?
Yes.
Yeah, we just
Yeah.
interviewed her too. She was great. Yeah.
Wild story, right? Like, holy smokes.
Oh,
Yeah.
she's fabulous. So from here to here, yes. And then you look at her and you're
Yeah.
like, huh?
Totally.
Like,
Mhm.
what?
Yeah.
I mean, she's delightful and you're just like, huh? Yeah. But I don't know. I think people are a lot kinkier. I think people do keep it quiet. But strangely, I think people are still very into sex. I think people think that
Mm.
you're 50 and
Mhm.
something dies inside. I think for most women, actually, it reignites.
Totally.
And yeah, and that could be why there are so many women with toy boys, because they're like, you know, the men are sort of going, oh, I'm kind of going the other way, and the women are going the other way. I see a lot of that.
Yeah.
I see a lot of
Yeah.
very frustrated, dissatisfied women, and men who've sort of
Mhm.
given up, which is kind of odd because that's not what you think.
Mhm.
But the women
Or where
haven't.
did they go?
But they
or
don't know
did
how
yeah.
how to do it, how to frame it. What are
And
they
then
going to
they're
do?
contending with their hormones too.
Where do they
and-
go? And they've
yeah.
been in marriages for a long time and they haven't based.
Yeah.
Well, there's all of that, and that is just a tsunami of shit that starts with perimenopause, menopause. It's horrendous, and then nobody cares.
Something to look forward to.
Yeah. Get started early before perimenopause, ladies. Start ahead of time.
It's lovely. I mean, I'm in that now. It's delightful, and nobody cares. Nobody's interested. Nobody knows what it does to you, and it is a very, very confusing time for women. And at least we are starting to talk about it more. But yeah, that women are much more sexual,
Yes.
45 plus into their 80s, for goodness sake, than we think. And so they should be. I mean, why should they shrivel up, for goodness sake?
Here's a more
I mean, I've
specific
been
question
married
for
for a
you.
very long
It's
time.
like,
Yeah.
I know, like, with my relationship, it's we have our like favorite positions. We know what will get each person off, and so there's just times where we've gotten, I don't want to say
Complacent?
bored, because we get off great and it's wonderful and it's fun, but it's like when that feeling is like, hey, do you want to have sex? I'm like, sure, you know, like I can take it or leave it, you know, versus like being really excited to co-create something. And I remember what it was like, you know, that first year, and we were doing tantra sessions every night and lighting all the candles. We'd start with a bath, and it was like this whole thing. And there was a mirror. His closet had a mirror, and we'd watch ourselves fuck. And we don't have a mirror like that anymore.
Maybe you need to get one.
Well,
Time to get
giant
Maybe
mirror,
you
but
need
there's
a
no
mirror.
good way to set it up
Yeah.
in the bedroom that doesn't screw up the design of the bedroom. So
We just got to
I don't know if you run into like sort of the routine obstacles.
I mean, I think it's normal for everyone who's been together a long time. But I mean, you do really have to talk about it all the time, and you have to kind of plan it. And it sounds a bit boring, and I've said this to Susie, but you do have to prioritize sex. I'm a big believer in
too.
that. Like the couples that kind of communicate and they prioritize it, which sounds a bit like I planned this. But sorry, that was a kind of American accent. I didn't mean to do that.
That's okay. We do English accents all the time.
But it works, and you basically, it has to be a priority in your life to the extent that you're not going to do something else. I mean, not something that's really important, like spend time with, your children or whatever. But I mean, like, okay, I'm not going to go and see that friend, or I'm going to stop working. Or you have to
Yeah.
prioritize it, and I don't think people do at
Right.
all. Where they get further and further in the relationship, and it's just like, I could go to sleep. To be honest with you, I got to get up at 6. I've got a presentation. You have to just fight all of that. And sometimes that's the hardest
right.
thing, but you have to consciously do it, because otherwise, if you're never going to get anywhere together. And that's really important to me, to my husband, is like prioritizing and consciously doing it. And sometimes it ebbs and flows. Sometimes you're good at it, and sometimes you're not so
Right.
good at it. But you just consciously keep working at it. and then it works.
Yeah, and I think this
basically.
idea of like
And-
spontaneous sex is kind of overrated. I think if people think that that's just the sex is just going to happen because we want to do it.
100%. We had this psychologist on early on when we started podding, and she said she was talking about spontaneous. It's spontaneous and responsive desire, isn't it? And she talked about
That's right.
responsive and spontaneous. Sorry, and said if you think about it, when you first meet somebody, like Susie talking about the guy in the Porsche or whatever, you've got all dressed up, you've worked out your outfit, you smell good, you look good. It's like a whole. You haven't just gone, okay, I'm going out with the guy in the Porsche and a pair of track pants. You've gone through I've gotten my nails done. You've gone through a lot of preparation, and you're going to the date ready, you're amped up kind of thing. So it's not really that spontaneous when you think about it.
Oh,
And
that's
I
a good
thought that was so
point.
interesting.
Yeah.
Because I'd never thought of that before. Like when you're dating, when you're like looking like on the, what's the nice way of putting it, out in the hunt like you are.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, not. I like that.
She's consciously looking. She's dating. She's conscious, which is a normal thing to do. She's been with somebody for 8 years. She should go out there and do her thing. She should, have fun. Otherwise, life is short. But she's consciously doing it. She's consciously looking for it. You're
She's putting
amped up,
the
your
effort.
body, everything.
Constantly in a
Your
like,
mind
game of
is
foreplay.
is ready for it. You're dressed like you're thinking about, the way you look. Well, you don't when you're further down in a relationship. Yeah, you do when you go out for a date, but it's not the same thing, is it? Date night.
I'm constantly wearing crotchless panties just in
Oh my
case.
God.
There you go.
I would like to get some of those.
There you go. There you go.
You should wear them every day around the
just me.
house, Leah.
Should I am.
You never know.
You never
You
know.
know, she never knows.
When the cable guy comes and I'm like, oh,
Oops.
What part of Matt's going to come forward?
oh my God.
you never know.
The cable guy.
Ooh, cable
Ask.
guy. You guys could play that. That sounds fun. Yeah, I like what you're saying, Mel, and I like that. What I'm always kind of having couples do is like do a full moon ritual and a new moon ritual, like at least twice a month, where you're doing a more like on the calendar intimacy date night, tantra date, whatever you want to call it, night, where you're spending 2 at least hours, if not more, like in intimacy together, like exploring each other's bodies and finding out what you like and figuring it out together and new positions and just playing in the playground together. And I think that then really informs all the rest of the sex you have the rest of the month. Like then if you go for a quickie or you have the sort of routine position that you always go to, it's infused with this recent, more conscious, thing that you had on the calendar.
Yeah, I just think I think life would just be so much more fun if couples in general just got passionate about having adventures when it comes to relationships, whether that's on intimacy or communication or sexuality or vacations. It's like looking at connection as being just a fun adventure that you never stop learning about. And it gets so easy for our jobs and our kids and stress to take over those kinds of thoughts and priorities and conversations. And yeah, I really wonder if the breakup rate would change.
Yeah.
If that was really encouraged culturally.
I think it would. I think that's, but it's also just like, it's so hard when you've been with someone for so long. Like, you're like, how do you change the structure that of, especially because, you're so conscious of the other person's feelings as well. I think that was a lot of what at the end of the relationship.
Yeah.
We were so conscious. I wanted to be so conscious of him. I'm like, no, he's working hard. I know he's working late. And so I know he doesn't want to have sex. I'm like, I'm working hard and I'm working late. So like, maybe I'll just masturbate beside him and I'll just like make sure that I have my orgasm and he can do his in the morning. We can just like still live our lives like this. And like, I'm happy, but like, we're fine.
Right.
I think that's a lot of people's relationships. And yeah, I don't know what the solution is. I think obviously communicating more, but somehow being selfish in the way that you want to talk about it too. If that makes sense.
It's like no longer be complacent.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
You know,
100%.
it's gotta
Like what Mel was saying, like you have to put the work in. You have to do the time.
You do, otherwise it
yeah.
just won't.
It's almost like I want to change the language. It's like, let's don't call it put the work in.
Work
Like, what a
in.
fucking drudgery. It's like, let's put the play in.
I know it is a
Right.
horrible expression, and I do say that. It's like it sounds awful, but like put the time in. Put the
Sometimes it is work though. Like let's not sugarcoat it either,
Yeah.
Yeah, put the play in.
Yeah.
It could be fun. It could be playful.
Yeah.
It could be light.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's work.
Especially when you're dealing with those emotions, like Susie was saying, it's like, it's a trigger, there's going to be some defensiveness if you say what you really
100%.
want to
But
say.
if you talked more and you kind of brought the barriers down, the negativity, it gets easier. Like the first conversation is never easy, but you have to keep going. And the assumption is you can't assume you're going to have one conversation and solve all of your problems. That's never going to happen. But you just got to start. And the more you talk, the easier it is. But I think that's the problem.
Right.
People don't start. They just keep going and sweeping it under the rug.
You're right. Twice, and it doesn't go well. And then they don't ask for help and get tools. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you got to get that outside perspective as well, coach or therapist or something.
Yeah. Well, they try and achieve too much from one conversation. You can't try and solve, the whole world's problems in one conversation. And that's part of it. You got to maybe start opening that door, start finding a glimmer, and then the door will keep opening. But you got to start.
Yeah.
It's got to be a process, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And somebody has to start it generally in a couple. One person's better at it
layer
than
by
the other.
layer.
Well, with that, I mean,
so much fun
fun
talking with
Loved
you
hanging out with you ladies.
ladies.
We
Yeah.
look forward to hanging out on your show coming up.
Mhm.
And I would just love to know, like, just from both of you, what would you like to leave our audience with? What's a little gem? What's a little piece of advice that you would like to share as a closing?
God, such a good question, Mel, darling.
That is.
Let me start it off.
Go on then.
I mean, ladies and gents who are listening, I think sharing your orgasm with someone else is not always, but is a more exciting thing. And when you do it openly and honestly, and you put the other person's orgasm before your own, then it's a new experience for both of you. And work on other people's orgasms, just like you would work on your own.
Yeah.
Wow.
Be generous. Be generous lovers.
Generous. That's a good one.
Generous.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I would take it more on the relationship side. I think a lot of people are very negative and they think they're never going to find love and it's all very difficult. And I think we live in doom and gloom. And it isn't, but I'm just, there is love and you can have spectacular relationships, but you can't not do anything. You have to use the word work. You have to put the effort in. You have to move this relationship. It's not going to just go along on its own. And that's the advice I would give. Keep communicating. Keep trying to... I guess you want to thrive in a relationship, right? So keep trying to do that for each other. And you will get there, and it won't always be fantastic, and life goes in ebbs and flows.
I love that.
I love that. So be a more generous lover, and if you want a thriving relationship, co-create it. Don't sit on your laurels.
Don't stop. Keep going.
And put the effort in.
Exactly.
Just like your orgasm. Don't sit on your ass. Make it yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much. So you all can find these two lovely ladies over at their podcast. Tell us again where they can find you, where are all the places you put your podcast out?
Yeah, so you can find Share My Truth pod on literally anywhere you get your podcasts. You can also go to any of our socials, Sharing My Truth pod, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. You can check out what we look like. We are so cute, especially Mel, biggest MILF I know. But yeah, go check us out. Follow us. You guys can comment on us. You guys can also go to sharemytruth.com where you can actually leave us a voicemail or email us with your own truths. And we will reply. You can maybe be on the pod as well if you'd so like. And we can't wait to talk to you and hang out and share your truths with us.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah. We love sharing. We love to hear stories.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. And please stay tuned. The Dish is up next with Dr. Willow and Leah. Love, love, love.
Now, our favorite part, the dish.
Okay, dishing it up.
Yeah, that was so fun. Just I loved just the different perspectives from the different generations. I think that's fascinating. There is a book. I don't know the name of it. I don't know anything about it, but my mom was reading it and she was like, this is so interesting. Like the way these kids are raised. And I think I was talking to another one of our Dakini friends recently.
Oh, yeah.
And they were just talking about like how our generation, like the end of the Gen Xers, really got spoon fed this like you can do it, like a fucking Nike commercial, like you can do it. Just do it. It's like that you can accomplish anything that you put your mind to, and I believe you can. I don't know if I believe that because I'm of that generation.
Right.
But,
I know I do too, because I was also, that was really drilled into me.
Yeah, but it's like, it's fucking hard. It's hard to just do the thing that you make the dream come alive. Like, that's why people don't do it, right? Because it is hard.
And it's pretty awful when you can't.
And you
And,
feel
like,
like
it
a
just
fucking
wrecks you.
failure. Yeah.
Right,
So there's also
right.
this like shadow element to it of like, and if you don't, then you fucking suck.
Right.
So,
Right.
anyway, little tangent there, but
Yeah.
just it's interesting to think about sexuality through the lens of the generations. I think we should definitely be having some Gen Zers. Well, we've had one for sure that we spoke with, I think.
Right. I mean, technically you're a millennial. You
No,
are. Yeah,
I'm
you
not.
are. Yeah, you are. I've looked up the generations now a bunch. 78 was the last year for the Gen Xers.
It just,
So,
78. Okay.
Yeah, so technically
You are right on the last.
I am right on the cusp. All my
Yeah.
sisters are millennials.
Well, I don't feel like a millennial.
I feel like I'm in the middle of Gen X and millennial.
Well, me
in all
too.
honesty.
Yeah, we're all both
Because
on the cusp.
there's two actual, like, Gen X is super wide. So
Yeah.
Matt, who was born in 1969, I'm
Yeah.
born in 1978. We're both Gen Xers, but we have different music preferences. I mean,
Totally.
there's so many differences for us.
Yeah.
And really there's like two sets of baby boomers too. It's all very confusing.
It's all very confusing. There's a
Yeah.
whole book on it though out there. People, I don't know the name of it.
I will say that therapist I was referring to earlier in the episode, Vanessa Marin,
Okay.
is the sex therapist who
Uh-huh.
had some really good advice, especially for more vanilla-minded people, not big sex adventurers, but really, sound stuff for everyday relationships.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I think the hardest thing for me with this episode was I was having so many technical difficulties.
I know.
I had to log in, log off.
Sorry. That was a
And my
bummer.
computer died like in the middle of the episode, and I had it plugged in.
Oh, is
but,
that what happened?
Yeah, it totally went dead. And I'm like, it's plugged in. I had to change plugs.
Oh gosh.
I just hate it when that
That's-
fucking happens.
We
It
got
just-
off on a tangent on BDSM right at that point too. It
Right,
was
I know.
Just getting juicy. But then you came back on and
yeah,
I mean, it was all good.
it was all good. So everyone, please tune in to their podcast and leave them a comment on their show, letting them know that you heard of their show because you heard our show. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
All right, sister. We'll talk to you later. Love,
Okay,
love,
ciao,
love,
y'all.
everyone.
Thanks for tuning in. This episode was hosted by Tantric Sex Master Coach and Positive Psychology Facilitator Leah Piper, as well as by Chinese and Functional Medicine Doctor and Taoist Sexology Teacher Dr. Willow Brown. Don't forget, your comments, likes, subscribes, and suggestions matter. Let's realize this new world together.